Hey everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. Looking at Shawn's Homelite LX-30 Bandit, which is basically a new version of the XL. This was produced, this would be mid-90s. So, before I get too far into this, I want to give a shout out to one of my viewers, Peter. Thank you. This is a grip mat. So this is designed out of a type of rubber. I mean, look at this. It'll actually sit at half-ass angles. It's designed to not slide around. There's another piece to this as well. And of course, the box that it came in showed it kind of sitting on a fender, you know, on a car, at an angle and all that. But just rubber, but very cool to keep stuff organized. So you can see I've already got some pieces in here from Shawn's saw. So again, Peter, thank you. This will come in very, very handy here in the shop. So this thing runs, and it didn't run good. It was running very rich, let me put it that way. On my 50-to-1 Steel Ultra, this thing was running richer than hell. Now, I haven't even hardly gotten into it yet, but I wanted to, again, show you first what a saw on the inside shouldn't look like. How thick that layer of sawdust is. Now that's oily sawdust. So that leads me to believe whatever's going on with this oiler, which is why it's here, has gone on for a while. Now Shawn said it pumps out at a high rate, and when it's sitting it makes a big mess. Well folks, I ran this for all of at most a minute, and I've had it sitting here on the bench sideways, and that's the mess that it's made. So, that's not cool. Now this should be a crankcase pressure type oiler. There should be a barb off of the base of the carburetor, if I'm remembering right on this version. Duckbill in here, pressurizes the oil, pushes the oil out and up to this control valve. Now this is set to the lowest setting right there. That would be the highest. Changing that didn't seem to do a diddly squat. So, I don't know what's going on in here yet. But I'm going to get it apart, get some of the junk cleaned out of here so that we can see what's going on, and then we'll come back. Okay, I haven't made it very far, but I already know parts and pieces of why this is going on. This thing's not plumbed the way it was originally intended to be. There's the oil valve up there. It wasn't even hooked up. It's coming straight out of the tank and down to the oiler here. So I'm going to have to take a look at this pressure hose and make sure the fitting actually has a vent hole in it in there. This later style, pull one out here. They went away from that bronze centered tube and they went to this plastic fitting. Now your duckbill goes on this end goes into the hose, and then you can see this part of the T-fitting has a little rubber insert and it's just barely open. So that's meant to mimic the old bronze setup where it would bleed off pressure back into the crankcase and prevent it from sitting here and weeping oil and making a giant mess. Now here's my suspicion. I don't think that fitting down there has a check valve on it. So when the saw is in the right position, especially when I turned it sideways like that, it's just running oil straight through and out. And if you plumb it through that selector valve, I don't believe it'll do that. I think that selector is set up to prevent that. So obviously I've still got to get this cleaned up, but the way it came out of the case like this so easily, I knew some plumbing was off, and that was easy to spot. The other thing I wanted to point out, this is the air filter. And it doesn't even have, doesn't even have the screen that's supposed to be down here to prevent this from sucking down into the engine. But it was supposed to draw air through that. No wonder it was running rich. whatever's been going on with this saw has been going on for a while. I'm going to check that freaking duckbill valve. It's leaking. So that's where a lot of the grease came from. Anytime the saw turned, it was leaking fuel in here all over everything, attracting the sawdust. So, funny part is this filter may not be shot. This might actually clean up. It doesn't appear to be rotten, but I just scraped, if not 1/4 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch of trash off. Yeah, that filter hasn't started to deteriorate yet, so we'll see how it cleans up. Anyway, there's a lot of cleanup here. We'll come back. Okay, let's start deciphering this. First thing I'm going to do is take this oil selector valve out. And you loosen that screw up, and it should pop right out. Okay, you want to be careful with this thing. Under no circumstances do you want to put compressed air on it. Ever. Excuse me. Not a good idea. Now, let me see if I remember the direction of flow on this. Probably should have looked that up. That should be max. Yeah, okay, I got that right. So your inlet is the center, your outlet is the outer one. And it sits in the case like that. Now that's important because you need that thing out to do this right. So we're going to replace, you see how this is plumbed to just go right over there. Not okay, not in this case. So let's start by getting that out. I don't like that. Shoot. Okay, I gotta get that out of there now. The oil pickup filter managed to wedge on the side of the tank here. You son of a gun. God dang it. There's enough oil in there that I can't see the damn thing to get the all to go in. Yeah, you know, love it when things go as planned. Just cool. Dang it. This was supposed to be a quicker and easier. You rat bastard. God. Come out of there. Okay, so that is clearly something that can happen. We can get rid of this old pickup hose. I've already got a piece cut that's just a little bit longer than what I need. So we're going to go ahead and just fish it in. Get it in place. Maybe. Oily little fart. Okay. That's not nearly enough. There we go. That's about somewhere close to where it'll need to be. We'll make a final adjustment later. I want to get this pressure one out of here. This is going to be a little interesting because I don't want to damage what's in here, because it all looks almost okay. But see, I think you guys can see that. See how the T-piece is pointed straight down? I don't like that. Now, I don't remember if I've ever read anything in... I want to get you out of there. Come on, don't piss me off. I don't know if I've ever read anything where Homelite service literature recommended a positioning on that. But I like it to face up, and I'll tell you why. If it's facing down like this into the oil tank and you've got it full, this is going to be resting in oil. So what that's going to do is any pressure in the tank is going to push oil back into the crankcase, which I think we all know is not good. These saws, a lot of them where folks have had that problem of oil getting back in there. Most of the time it's a missing duckbill valve. On this style, could easily be what I was just talking about. Let's get that old hose out of there. And we'll slip the new one in. And again, this is probably a little longer than it needs to be because it's just going over the carburetor, but you need a little excess for routing purposes to avoid kinking it, because you don't want to do that. Now that duckbill looks good. This fitting looks good. Alright. So I'm going to twist the hose. And I'm only going to pull that in right there. Right there. That is how I like to set them up. You can see that the vent is pointing up, the duckbill is just off of the tank. You don't want it sitting there rubbing on it because I'm not convinced that it'll operate properly. Alright, I'll actually twist it a little bit more. Maybe that view, there we go. That's how I'm going to set it up, and that's how I set these up. So, now that we're ready to put the carb back on, let me fish in the old ultrasonic here that I'm not convinced is doing shit. I am less than impressed. Well, it helped a little bit. It's probably about what I would expect from Harbor Freight. It works just well enough that I don't know that I could go get a new one, and I don't know that it would do any good at all. But it's not. Yeah. But to be fair, it cleaned this wretched mess up okay. So let's put this back on. And we'll see about routing that pressure hose. This is just going into plastic, so you don't need to get too carried away with it. Alright. So that's the pressure hose. That's what's got to come over here to the carburetor. So it looks like I'm going to trim a little bit more off. And we'll form this thing over. And see how it looks. This is not the world's best design. Real easy to kink. Homelite played around with their automatic oilers a lot. Alright, that'll work. But honestly, the old diaphragm on the side, it worked. should have stuck with it in my not. Okay. So as you're getting this particular version back in the case, you've got to achieve a few things. You've got to make sure your bar pin screw isn't sticking out and jamming over on this side. Got to get your spark plug wire started, tucked right in there. You've got to feed these hoses out this hole and hook up that throttle linkage. So there's a lot going on here. It's best to get down and get your face into it. Okay, I might have already gone too far. I'm holding the throttle trigger so that I can line this linkage up. There it goes, I think. And now I'm going to start trying to feed this hose out. That one's close enough. Yeah. There we go. Feed it right out the hole there. Well, I don't know. I don't think I have enough out of the tank on this one. I had plenty to work with. Yeah, we'll see. Alright, so the throttle just snapped in just fine. There we go. So, keep sliding it. I can push this other hose through. There we go. There's what you're seeing over there. Spark plug wire is still doing roughly what it's supposed to do. There we go. You want it fed like that. Those two outer fins, if it's jammed in there, no good. It's got to be in this recess right here. So in we go. And now, we've got to get the bar pin to slip. There we go. Alright. That could have been worse. Could have been a lot worse. Okay. None of that is kinked right there. Slip the pressure line underneath the housing here. The wires for the switch, you've got to fish them back up through. And they can be a little, what are you hung up on? Oh, the flywheel magnet that grabbed them. Alright, I don't know what's wrong with that one. What the hell are you doing? Come on. There we go. So I'm going to put a screw in the top here. Just start it. There we go. Now it can't back out and go anywhere. Let's get the switch in before I ever get too far and forget something and a wire drops. So you want the red, when it's in that position, that's off. So come over, squeeze those through, rotate. And this one snap tab is pushed out over here, so I'm going to have to compress it back in. It is being a poo-poo. There we go. Okay. And again, those you want to make sure they're routed up over the engine and not anywhere down where the flywheel can grab them and cut them. So let's get back to this oiler. That hose right there is our supply hose. So we want it on the center prong. Now I'm going to use needle nose to get that seated the rest of the way. The outlet is the outside one. And I probably still have more hose than I need on this outlet, but that's okay. I'd rather have a little extra to work with than not quite enough. On this oil pickup hose, I could always pull some out of the tank and then push it back in. So then, you're just going to push this in place. I'm going to put the top in first, since the screw's at the bottom. And there it goes. And then you run your screw down. Just tight. I'm going to reset that to low before I forget. And I'm going to come back over here and make sure that nothing is kinked. And it's not. It's a sharp bend that it has to make with the oil valve, though. I mean, the tolerance in these is really tight. I say not Homelite's best design. Note that the fuel tank vent is still facing basically up in here. The vent tube on that barb, so I'm feeling pretty good about this. Should I be? I don't know. So, let's get the rest of this engine back together, which isn't much. I'm going to tighten these caps down so we don't make a mess. These are the later style screws that have a Torx head, so that's kind of nice. Now they have a flat blade slot as well, but the Torx is far less likely to strip out once you get all the crap cleaned out of there, so your tool will actually bite. Okay. Yeah, I should have probably done a short snippet of video of how rich this thing was running. I honestly don't know how it was able to run with that goobered up air filter. That was bad. Oh, and I hear UPS out there. That's a good sign. Got a bunch of stuff coming in from Summit. I'm doing a engine oil cooler on my Duramax. But I won't go into that too much in this video. Save that for one of those non-chainsaw videos that I do sometimes. Whew. Yeah, see, this pisses me off. I've got the hot water on, and not all that greasy crap came off. It cut it down a bit. But in my opinion, what I understood of an ultrasonic, it should have taken all that off. But whatever. Let's see, you get what you pay for. It's a Harbor Freight special, so it's not like I invested my life savings in it. Oh, I wanted to replace this duckbill valve. Now it's not cracked out, but it also doesn't have the resiliency that it should have, and it was definitely leaking. And I don't want leaks in there. So we'll just get that replaced. There we go. to take a couple shortcuts here, and I'm only going to put a couple screws in. You guys don't need a video of that, just putting screws in. And if I have to take something back apart, it'll be less stuff to get irritated with. Come on. Threads in this head are just a tiny little bit. They still hold good, but that initial start, you gotta be careful. It wants to go in the wrong way. Alright. Okay. I hope I didn't hook that up backwards. I don't think I did. Let's see if she'll run a little better. Alright, let's get some oil in it and see if we fix that problem. That tuning was pretty far off from what I would want. Okay. Okay, so as you can see on a system like this, it takes a bit to reprime it. You know, when you've got it dry and you come back, give it some time. So that's pumping significantly slower than it was. I'm going to leave it on this low setting, and I'll check out the bar and chain and bolt them up, and then I'll do a sling test and see just how much it's putting out, but I can already tell you it's less. We'll see if it stops pumping. But anyway, I think we've got it right. Not having everything plumbed through this valve was the first and biggest issue. With this particular port, it apparently puts a hell of a lot of pressure in here, and it was pushing it out very quickly, and having the open end of that tube pointed down, I don't think it was bleeding pressure back into the crankcase to prevent it from sitting there and oiling itself. So, like I say, I'll bolt up a bar and chain, do the sling test, and then the final will be letting it sit on the garage floor for a couple days. If there's no puddle underneath it, I'm going to say we got it. Okay. Got everything back together. Got the bar ground chain sharpened. Quick note. These poor little hard-nosed bars, they really take a pounding. I ground quite a bit of metal off of here to get it flat. It'd cut a channel up front, basically, and it was clear that the bar wasn't getting flipped all that much, and there was definitely one side of the chain cutting more aggressively than the other, because both sides of the bar had the rails worn pretty hard to one side. So, with that in mind, I'm setting this on the number 2 setting right there, and we're going to see how much sling off there is. But note, on the hard-nosed bar, you don't want your chain as tight as you do on a sprocket bar. See how there's a little hang there? And I can pull it away, and it's not just snap tight. If you can't roll it over like this, on a hard nose you probably have it a little too tight, and that will definitely contribute to premature wear on the tip. But that's why I'm turning the oil up to at least number 2. We're going to see how well it slings off, and I may even go a little bit further. Each saw is different. I don't know. Let's find out. I'm going to leave it set on 1. The chain is good and wet. You saw me move from 1 to 2 and the difference in the stripes. You know, it depends on what you're cutting, what your personal preference is. If I was cutting pitchy stuff, you know, some pine, cypress, something like that, I'd probably go to at least number 2 to keep this from gumming up. And if you were in a hot day cutting some super hard wood, like some dry madrone or, you know, dead oak, maybe number 2. But with this length bar, it looks like number 1 will do for the most part. So, running it the way I did, you're always going to get a puddle underneath it when you're done. Because I wasn't cutting them. There was no sawdust to soak up all the crap. So, you know, it won't surprise me to get a little spot like this right here after it's sat on the floor for a little bit. But it shouldn't be any more than that. So that'll be my test. But, all in all, I think with having the hoses routed right, this plumbed properly, everything bolted together, I think we're good to go.